So crazy right now. I already know.
Hey, Hawkeye fans, Chad Leistikow with Kennington Smith. Sorry for the delay, some technical difficulties, but we think we've got it figured out. If for some reason Kennington's connection fails, I'll just wing it and I'll just ride your 3-word headlines to the finish. How about that? That'll be the plan. Kennington, what do you think? Hawkeyes defeat Purdue 24-6. Um, uh, you got to watch this one from afar today, just like I did for Rutgers. We'll be together the rest of the season. But what jumped out at you in terms of what was really probably Iowa's most complete performance of the season? And that's coming off what we talked about last week against Northwestern.
Yeah, really what just stuck out to me was just kind of starting fast and continuing it through halftime and into the third quarter, where it felt like that Kaleb Johnson long touchdown run was kind of the knockout punch. But really impressed with Iowa's defense. I think that's where I start. They established a certain level of physicality from the first drive that Purdue was just not able to match from their offensive line perspective. I thought this was a great game by the defensive line, and really one that speaks to the maturity and the growth of that unit. I'm going back to spring practice where we heard Kelvin Bell and Jay Neiman say that the next step for this group is kind of that pre-snap recognition, playing fast off the ball, recognizing things, being able to act off that and lead the defense from that way. And I feel like we saw that today. Purdue's offensive line was just not able to win one-on-one matchups with the defensive line, and that manifested itself in rush defense and pass defense. So that's where I start. Obviously, it was, 3 levels on defense. All of them played great, but that's really where I start, was just dominance on the defensive line. And Iowa's offensive line played well enough in the first quarter to make it an insurmountable lead. So I don't know if there's been a game this year where we've talked about, both sides of the ball, line of scrimmage wise, is completely dominating a game. But that's kind of where I start with this. And, things in Iowa are looking up, especially with, Illinois losing to Michigan State as well.
Yeah, we will get into that. There is a chance now that Iowa could somehow win the Big Ten West. Long ways away from that. We'll get to that as we go here, Kennington. But I'm glad you started with defense, because that was, I wrote a lot about the Charlie Jones stuff, a lot about the offense. Hey, this is a second straight week. Petras and the O-line look good. But I'm glad you started with the defense because, as I think it was Chris Hassel pointed out on Twitter, Purdue had scored 20 points or more in 14 straight games. Hawkeyes held the Boilermakers to 3 points today. That's it, 3 points. And this is a team, as I kind of wrote in my first recap, you think about the loss 24-7 last year in Kinnick Stadium. This was the reverse, 24-3 in Ross-Ade Stadium, where the Hawkeye offense is the one kind of running up and down the field, and the Purdue offense is the one committing the overthrow turnovers. I mean, think about that from last year. Petras, 4 interceptions. But yeah, defensive players for Iowa talking about how they played a lot more man coverage in this game. And it was really interesting to watch how they defended Charlie Jones. And it was very clear to me that was the only offense Purdue really has, because O'Connell just looks at him constantly. 19 targets for Charlie, 11 catches, 106. He had the nice 41-yard completion, but take that one away, which turned into no points. That's 10 catches for 65 yards, right?
Yeah.
I think you take that. You take that. He really didn't hurt him. Jones didn't really hurt Iowa, even though he had, 104 yards.
Yeah. I mean, it was just, it really felt like a lot of what happened in this game from Purdue offensively was just them taking what Iowa was giving them defensively. I think last year and in previous years when David Bell was there and they were able to make big plays through the air, Purdue was on the offensive. They were attacking the secondary. And something interesting that I thought about as I was watching the game was Kayvon Merriweather during the week said that when they went back and looked at past games against Purdue, a lot of what happened in terms of them allowing big plays were defensive breakdowns, mental mistakes, and things on their end that they felt like were correctable. And there were very few, if any, defensive breakdowns in the secondary or mental errors. I mean, it felt like Iowa back 7 was sitting on every route. So very prepared. Secondary, Phil Parker's game plan works to perfection. We're going to get into 3-word headlines, but he's getting a lot of praise for how they defended Jones. It just felt like a lot of it was just Charlie Jones underneath 6 yards, 5 yards. They weren't able to produce anything offensively from anybody else. Like you said, he had one play for 41 yards, and tight end Peyton Durham had another one for 24 yards. But other than that, I mean, completions of 5, 4, 3, 2. Charlie had a lot of 6, 7, 8s. There just wasn't a lot going in the passing game. And to my previous point about the defensive line, this is a Purdue offense that has had a 100-yard rusher in 4 of his last 5 games and only had 87 rushing yards today. There was a long run on that first possession by McAbee, but after that, Purdue didn't have anything going on the ground either. So all-around dominant defensive performance by Iowa. And the man coverage thing that you brought up in the postgame is also a good point. It just speaks to what Jay Neiman said in the Wednesday availability, where he said we're going to have to get hands on them to disrupt the timing. Defensive line is going to have to win if we're going to disrupt that, and that's exactly what played out today.
Yeah. Let me read a couple quotes from Moss here in the post game. He said, "Everything that we worked on during the week, we ended up doing as a team, as a defense. That's what I'm proud about the most. There weren't many mental errors, if any." And then he later said, "We had a great game plan for their offense. What hurt us in the past was when we get in those 3 deep zones and they just hit little dinks and dunks around the field. We played a lot more man and tighter coverage, and the D-line was able to get to work today too. I think our game plan was the best it's been against them." I mean, you can't really sum it up better than that. Totally agree on the defensive front. And I thought Lucas Van Ness was great. I thought Deontay Craig coming back home to Indy was great. Logan Lee, came back from injury, and he had the other sack, right, if I'm remembering correctly. And then, of course, Kayvon with his 3rd pick of the year, now tied with Cooper DeJean with 3 picks for the team lead. Maybe looking towards some all Big Ten honors potentially. Safety is sometimes it's hard to kind of weed through those in all Big Ten. I think Kayvon's got a real good shot at all Big Ten. That's awesome. And then, of course, Seth Benson with the pick as well. Let's flip to offense, Kennington. Unless you had anything else on defense.
I think that was it. I will say this, though, about defense, and I put this in my mailbag. TJ Hall getting some early in the secondary, and Aaron Graves had a great game also with 3 tackles and tackles for loss. So a couple true freshmen making some plays on the defensive side. So the obviously the veterans had a great game, but there's a lot to be excited about in terms of the youth of the defense as well.
Hey, you just gave the perfect segue because true freshman. Let's go to offense. Kaleb Johnson, man. I think it's just posted actually. My column on Kaleb is up. Superman, Kaleb Johnson. We got Hercules and Superman on this Hawkeye roster. You gotta like that. He was amazing, and we've seen this kind of building, haven't we, Kennington? I mean, even you kind of take it with a grain of salt against Nevada. The 2 big long runs because it's Nevada, but you could see the speed in those games. When he gets outside, he's just so effective. That outside zone really works for him and his style. And, that 44-yard run right after the Benson interception set up Drew Stevens' lone field goal and a 17-0 lead. All those points were into the wind, by the way, into the wind. And then, it's the 75-yard TD. Ends up with 22 carries for 200 yards. And I know you'll appreciate this, Kennington. I could not even post video because it was so windy. I don't know if you saw any of the videos, but the insane wind against the tent we were in. Yeah. Kirk Ferentz said it was like Desert Storm in there. And, Kaleb talks so quiet.
Yeah.
You can't even hardly hear him in a normal conversation, let alone with that. So I couldn't post the video. But nonetheless, quiet guy, sort of, big confidence, big game.
Yeah, if I could guess, I'm sure he used the phrase green grass a lot.
He did.
I just saw a lot of green grass, ran as fast as I could. That's really what it came down to. And this game was really impressive for the reason that Iowa was really depleted at running back. I don't believe Gavin Williams played any snaps, even though he dressed out. He was dealing with the injury from Northwestern. Leishon Williams, at least I heard on the broadcast that he was banged up coming into the game. He had a very limited role. So it really was all on Kaleb Johnson, and he delivered in a major way. And obviously you don't, there's not any positives in players being injured, but I think that this was an opportunity for Kaleb to really seize that number one running back position. And the offense was really paced through him. Got to give credit to the offensive line again, second week in a row that they've created holes in, won their matchup at the line of scrimmage, and Kaleb was able to find those holes, exploit them. There were moments in the game where vision-wise he could have made this cut, that cut, maybe gotten some more yards, but that's going to continue to come as he's a true freshman. I feel like that's probably the biggest area of improvement for him, is just kind of, continuing to work on picking his spots and knowing which holes to hit, what cuts to make, and all of that. But you look up and it's a 200-yard game. You really can't have much criticism for him. So huge game for Kaleb Johnson. I feel like he has solidified the number one running back spot. Obviously, there's going to be comparisons to Tyler Goodson. Not that they run this, but it seems like at least early on they have a very similar career arc. Come in behind maybe some more veteran guys, and then he just kind of ascend towards the end of the year. And it's almost kind of undeniable that this is the best back on the roster. So great game by Kaleb. It was nice to see Jazzy and Patterson get in there for a few snaps as well. And if Leishon and Gavin Williams injuries continue to persist, Jazzy is going to have to take on a bigger role. So good to see him get in there and get some reps and earn some trust from the coaching staff as well.
Yeah, I've kind of been distracted by some messages here, but Kaleb with, as you mentioned, the injuries to Leishon and Gavin, Kirk Ferentz said that neither one really practiced much this week, and they barely kind of made it for the game. I think we saw Leishon get a couple passes out of the backfield and maybe one carry, but didn't do much there.
One carry, 2 catches.
Yeah, 2 catches. So very, very limited. So this was Kaleb Johnson's week in practice, and this was his game. And it's funny, like I'm not going to say he said it like this but Kirk Ferentz has a knack for kind of like, with the Deuce Hogan stuff last year,
right?
Like a little bit kind of poking fun at young freshmen who he basically said like 2 different times he doesn't know what he's doing out there. but I think he just means that as a running back, and I don't think anybody like takes it personally. But anyway, you made the point about Tyler Goodson, and that's where I was going to go before I kind of got distracted. But Sam Laporta said this. He said, "I played with Tyler Goodson, kind of the same thing. Guys that play older than they are, guys that just need to get more experience. The more experience he gets, he's going to keep progressing. He's got a bright future ahead of him." And I made the comparison to Wisconsin's Braylon Allen, what they found last year in him. And now these 2 guys get to meet next week on the field in Kinnick Stadium, 2 young backs. And the great thing for the Hawkeyes is, Kaleb Johnson, he can't go to the NFL for another 3 years. So, and he loves it here. He loves it now. He absolutely loves it in Iowa City. So that's a really good thing for the Hawkeyes.
Yeah. If he's rushing for 200 yards and doesn't know what he's doing, what's going to happen when he figures it out? I think that's the question that's on my mind, and that has to be exciting if you're a Hawkeye fan, especially because the fact that you said that he loves it at Iowa and he loves this team, and I get that sense as well, talking with him, especially after wins like last week against Northwestern. He was almost, like you said, he's a man of few words, but you could tell it meant a lot to him to kind of like be in that type of atmosphere with the team and celebrate. So the fact that he loves it here is a great sign, because it wasn't too long ago where there were a lot of conversations about who was even going to be back on offense at the end of the season when you think about transfer portal and just the way the team was trending at that point. So, true freshmen everywhere just kind of, making plays for Iowa. So you got to feel excited about the youth of the team and the potential, the future of the team. And Kaleb Johnson definitely looks like a building block and a foundational piece on Iowa's offense for years to come. You're still on mute.
Yes. Those that are wondering, we have a Charlie Jones sidebar up too. Our friend Mike Carmen over here talked to Charlie, and so those comments are now posted at hawkcentral.com. You saw the Hawkeyes kind of Hawkeye players talking to him and shaking hands with him after. It was mostly a post-game situation with Jones. I never really saw them interact before the game. And mutual respect. Riley Moss said, he didn't say anything to Jones when he knocked him to the ground. He just said, "Act like you've been there before," to himself. And he said, "I've acted like I've been there before." Now there is some questions about Iowa's wide receiver depth. Good questions. Brody Breck did not play today. That left the receiving reps to basically Deontay Vines and Nico Regaini, who scored a touchdown. And then Arlen Bruce left the game, as several of our viewers are noticing. He did come back with that right shoulder injury, but he wasn't, very, very limited. And obviously Cooper DeJean returned punts. So here's what Kirk Ferentz said. He thought Brecht had a chance today, didn't make it, but he thinks he'll be good next week. And he thought Arlen Bruce and Logan Lee, who both got hurt today and returned, would be fine next week. That was his initial read. So all in all, honestly, Kennington, a good health report. And then sticking on the offensive side of the ball, what did you think of the offensive line? I mean, you look at, again, the second straight week of really good balance, run-pass balance. I guess I see the reaction like, oh, Purdue's defense sucks too. Like, big whoop. But, they were moving around a Big Ten defensive line to the tune of almost 200 rushing yards and 200 through the air.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to criticism about Purdue's defense, Northwestern was ranked going into last week's game 97th in the country in total defense. I believe Purdue was somewhere in the 40s. So that is a significant uptick in difficulty level. That's a top 50 defense. You can call that average nationally, but it was a tougher opponent than Northwestern. And for the most part, at least in that first half, Iowa had their way. And it really, obviously you want to continue that momentum into the second half. But even as Iowa's offense sputtered in those last 6 possessions, they were not in danger of losing the game because Purdue was not going to be able to score that many points. So just looking at the offense in the first half to that first possession of the second half, I thought the offensive line looked strong. Obviously, they were able to get pushed for Kaleb running the ball. But I think that the biggest step that they took was in pass protection. And what you saw throughout that first quarter was Purdue trying to send pressure to Spencer Petras. And the fact that the offensive line was able to give him a clean pocket, even with extra defenders coming, allowed for Petras to go through his progressions and find receivers underneath. That's where Nico really made his game today, catching those underneath passes and racking up a lot of yards after the catch. Those looks have not been there in weeks past because, it's just been tough for the offensive line to pick up blockers. I thought this was their best blitz pickup. Say that 3 times fast. This was their best blitz pickup game of the season. It allowed for Petras to look for several different guys. Nico Ragaini was the beneficiary of that today. But that was my biggest takeaway for the offensive line is obviously good rushing day. Passing, huge step forward, another big confidence boost for them.
Yeah, Regaini had 3 catches, 56 yards, 48 yards after the catch. That was kind of the something Petras talked about afterwards, just like on that touchdown pass, a 29-yarder. It was just Purdue was sending more guys than Iowa could block, and that's a hot read, and they got it done. I mean, how many times have we seen those quote-unquote hot reads most of the season just get kind of blown up or a ball batted down, whatever. It was a good read, good recognition by Spencer. And again, there's that veteran, his buddy, Nico, making the catch and scoring from 29 yards out. He had it, Charlie Jones had a good game, but Nico, his kind of counterpart there had a really good game as well. And certainly give credit to Sam Laporta, 3 catches, 71 yards. And do want to point out Spencer Petras now, the last 2 weeks, I'm going to do the math in my head here, 34 for 53 passing, 412 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. It's good numbers. Good numbers from the Iowa quarterback, something to build on against Wisconsin, a team he had success against 2 years ago at Kinnick Stadium. Good job by Petras today.
34 of 53 equates to 64% completion percentage, which was, I feel like, around the number that we projected for him at the beginning of the season, or a number that we thought would be a mark of that was significant improvement from last year to this year, like somewhere between 64 and 65%. So that's really where you want them. Obviously, raw statistically, passing yards, all those things are not going to jump off of the page, but playing mistake-free football is the most important thing. That's what's really plagued him, especially, is turning the ball over, going back to last season. And I think that the takeaway is Iowa's offense has improved enough to the point where you can feel confident that they can win games with this level of offense. They're going to continue to try to get better, obviously, But looking at the last 2 weeks, if the defense is going to continue to play at this level, which we expect them to, special teams was good today. We expect them to play at a good level. Iowa's offense does what they've done these last 2 weeks. There's a real chance that they could win out in November. So obviously there's going to be some, detractors, and the second half offensively wasn't pretty, but they've done more than enough offensively these last 2 weeks to win games, which is what Hawkeye fans have been calling for
Exactly.
throughout this entire season. Exactly what's happening right now. Average, competent. Can they move the ball? Offense, don't have to light up the scoreboard. That's exactly what they're doing right now.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly right. So let's give Brian Ferentz a little credit. Another good game plan, and we haven't even brought up the wind. I mean, the wind. I'm telling you, man, it was a serious deal. It was no joke today. It affected Purdue. It did not affect Iowa as much. I mean, Spencer does have that strong arm. Both O'Connell interceptions were overthrows. And with the wind, I don't think that's an accident. Give Iowa credit for, playing smart, playing well in the wind, and Torrey Taylor obviously had a good part in that as well. You brought up the running the table, Kennington. I know you wrote it in your mailbag. Hawkeyes 5-4 in the Big Ten. A stunning loss today for Illinois at home, and that really opens the door now to the possibility that the Hawkeyes could win out and win the division. Now, Purdue would need to beat Illinois next week, pretty much, unless Illinois loses the Northwestern in the season. I don't think any of us are going to predict that. So home game for Illinois next week at Purdue looms really large in terms of the Big Ten West race. And all of a sudden now there is a path now for the Hawkeyes to get that Ohio State rematch, maybe, or Michigan rematch, one or the other, I guess. I guess just let's not – I'm just saying the possibility is open, but let's talk about what it's going to take to do that. I mean, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska now, you've expended a lot of emotion here getting back up in your feet last week. And this game, they pointed to, no question about it, a lot of motion poured into this game. Can the Hawkeyes kind of get up now for the Badgers, which in the past has been one of those big games, but now it just sort of feels like not as much juice to the game because you've had this Purdue game was like so pent up with emotions.
Right. Yeah. I agree with that 100%. I think that it's going to be a challenge for Kirk and the players to find that juice for Wisconsin the same way that they kind of got up for these last two games. Obviously, it was like Northwestern was back against the wall, season on the line. There's a lot of bad blood with Purdue, a game that's been circled on the calendar for a while. With Wisconsin, there is that element of a revenge factor, especially after what happened last year, and Wisconsin has been a pretty prominent nemesis of Iowa in the last several years. But I would agree that it just doesn't feel the same comparatively in terms of urgency with these last two games. But I think that Iowa, their mindset right now is almost kind of like, I don't know if smelling blood in the water is the right way to describe it, but I just feel like right now that they're just a team that is playing with a lot of confidence, and they just want to try to ride this wave of momentum as much as they can. So I don't know if that's going to be an issue, but I think that this is, probably going to be their toughest challenge of these last two games comparatively, Northwestern, Purdue, up against Wisconsin, our arch nemesis. So I'm really looking forward to that game. And, Nebraska went down today. So that's a game that's like a little bit less in focus. I know we talked about that being like a 5-6 matchup for a bowl game. I don't know how much Nebraska going to be playing for at that point, but looking ahead to next week at Wisconsin, I look at it very similarly to kind of, these last 2 weeks, an opportunity to exercise some demons for Iowa for sure.
We kind of talked about it a little bit on the show this week. It's like opposite year. You lose to Iowa State, you lose to Illinois. Now you're beating Northwestern, you're beating Purdue. Wisconsin's kind of been that third team that's sort of been in the Hawkeyes craw. Maybe they get that one. But then, if it really is opposite year, then Minnesota, what does that say about Minnesota, Nebraska? But we'll see. Like you said, you have to kind of like Iowa's chances now to get bowl eligible. Just one more win to go. That was like looking, very, very up in the air a couple weeks ago. Now it doesn't feel that way. This team seems like it's playing, maybe as good as anybody in the West right now. And, maybe with Wisconsin, maybe those are the two best teams in the West suddenly, like we all predicted, right? So it's just kind of crazy. The Big Ten West is wild. Let's do 3-word headlines. We got to close up here shortly, buddy. I have really not sifted through these. 500 of them so far supplied. Thank you so much to our awesome readers. And I got to actually find these. So why don't you, if you got some, go ahead and start.
All right, here we go. Starting off with Iowa men's basketball. Patrick McCaffrey chiming in.
All right. Thank you, Patrick.
Hawks are hot.
Now, that wasn't that creative.
Right, but they are hot right now.
They are hot now. They're, Two in a row.
Two in a row. Is that a win streak, or is that just back-to-back wins?
Well, it is Iowa's best win. We said they needed kind of a good win, and this definitely qualifies as a good win. I mean, it's a good Purdue team, man. It's a good Purdue team. Yeah. And they just they made him look really, really pedestrian. O'Connell, 20 of 43, 168 yards. It's a 70% career passer, and he was like 40-some% today.
Yeah. From our colleague Mark Emmert, this is November, which is telling because this is Iowa's 12th straight win in the month of November, which is the third longest streak in the country. So one of the best teams in the country at getting hot at the right time. So timely 3-word headline.
Wow, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. I'm thinking it through in my head. That's wild. Gabe Johnson weighs in. He had weighed in with a bunch of them. Cold November pain, kind of like that one. And fill her up with PHIL. Dave Laughlin says stalled at midfield and includes the picture of the train, which was absolutely hilarious. I wish you could have been here for that, Kennington. I know Scott Dochterman, our friend and colleague, tweeted it out. Did you see that the train gets stuck?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a bad omen.
the little teeny weeny train, it's like a real. It's not a real train, but it's like it's a train that leads them out of the tunnel, and it's stalled coming out of the tunnel, and they couldn't push it off the field. Like they had like 10 people trying to push it off the field. Like some of the players started helping to try to push it. Right. Must be a pretty heavy train.
Yeah, definitely.
But it was like the person driving it was like, like signaling like I can't do anything, Oh, just comedy. And then Seth Benson almost ran into it off the Iowa Swarm was like kind of approaching the train.
Yeah,
it was just a comedy. And then of course the Hawkeye Twitter account had some fun with that as well. I'll let you guys check that out. But that was funny. Go ahead.
From Hawkeye Elvis, off the rails. So that coincides a little bit with what you're saying with the train. This one from Ray Ortega, but I've seen a lot of variations of this. Chuck Fizzle Sizzles, or Chuck Sizzle Fizzles. Again, say that 5 times fast.
Yeah.
A lot of not sorry Charlie. 11 catches equals L. That type of thing. No David Bell from Matt Benson.
Yeah. There's a funny one in there of the Phil Parker. Just go into the mentions and look at Hawks for Life 89.
Yeah.
There's a funny little image there. It's a little not safe for work, but
this one from Brennan Stiles, Parker's Mona Lisa.
That was, yeah. Boy, what a season for Phil Parker. It's a shame. It's a shame that if they had beaten Illinois, I mean, just think if that Riley Moss overturn does not occur. I mean, we're talking, our conversation is 100% different right now with Iowa's only 2 Big Ten losses to Michigan and Ohio State and the schedule ahead to come and the offense the way it's looking. Go ahead.
And I mean, if Riley takes that back and they add another defensive touchdown, you look at the metrics, like we could be talking about Phil Parker as a potential Broyles Award winning assistant. It's been that level of excellence for him. Another one, and I know we've talked about exercising demons a lot, so this one just feels right. From Hyperbolic Hawkeye, Phil Parker's Exorcism.
Yeah, that's a good one. Austin Rickardson back on track. I like that because of the the train parallels there. Brad Haugen, sizzle, no steak. That's pretty good. They have Chuck Sizzle T-shirts all around here now. So, boy, Charlie Jones looked like he was taking a beating out there, didn't it? I mean, he was just like barely getting up from some of those, and he made one incredible diving catch in there. I mean, the dude's having a great year, no question about it.
Yeah, I mean, he played hard, like you said. He's 19 targets. He is their offense. So there was a lot of opportunities for Iowa's DBs to take shots at him. I mean, they played physical. All the hits were clean, in my opinion. So it's just like good competitive football. So let me get your thoughts on this from Iowa hot guy getting 2008 vibes.
Yeah, Iowa lost to Illinois. Now, obviously, the sequence here is different, but kind of hit a low point, losing to Illinois, and then won its final 4 games. They had the signature win that year, finishing 9-4. But yeah, I mean, Iowa's ceiling right now. I mean, let's take the Big Ten title game potential out of this. Iowa's ceiling, right now is to go 8-4, make a bowl game, win the bowl game, finish 9-4. So yeah, there is a little parallel there. And Kaleb Johnson looks a little bit like Sean Green. How about I'm curious your take on this one, Kennington. This is the last one I'll read. Nate Westra says, benching Petras worked. Was that a little bit of a wake-up call for Spencer to kind of have the performance he did at Ohio State, get benched, go through that quarterback competition? I mean, he's been a different quarterback, obviously, the last 2 weeks. No question about it.
Yeah, I think it lit a fire under him for sure. I think it just lit a fire under the entire offense. I mean, it just seemed like it was very much like throughout the season, Iowa obviously struggled, and there was a consistent, we're sticking by it. And then, like, the fact that it could change on a hat, I think it was a bit of a wake-up call for him and for the offense, really the entire team. And they were, again, after that loss, it really was back against the wall, circle the wagons. If we don't get back on track, this is going to spiral out of control. So I think there's something to that for sure. Like you said, he's playing with the level of confidence he's playing at. Is something that I personally haven't seen. I haven't been on the beat for very long, so you can speak to more of this. But I don't know if I've seen him more confident than I have these last 2 games.
Yeah, no question. And I think it's because of the O-line giving him more time. And I think Nico being back and, kind of 100%, that really helps too. Nico, Sam, Vines, had a couple nice catches today to get it going. And yeah, they're just clicking a little bit more. Luke Lachey had a big long catch. So yeah. All right, we got to wrap up, man. So thanks for joining us. Congrats to the Georgia Bulldogs. Still undefeated. I guess we should give you a shout out there, right, Kennington? How was that game today?
It was great. I put down a parlay for Tennessee covering the spread, so the Dogs busted my parlay, but it was a sacrifice well worth it. At the same time, Iowa fans got a chance to watch Illinois go down to Michigan State. So great day for Dog fans, great day for Hawkeye fans. Shout out to Iowa, and I'll say this last 3-word headline from Craig P. Bill Brashear approved.
Oh yeah.
Legendary defensive coordinator passes away, and his family is, in our thoughts and prayers. And Iowa goes out there and lays out a defensive masterpiece.
Yeah. R.I.P. Bill Brashear, great Hayden Fry, a longtime defensive coordinator. That announcement came out this morning. He passed away yesterday. So our thoughts and prayers to the Brashear family. His wife, who's still alive, was one of my school teachers growing up.
Wow.
Just kind of crazy. Yeah, crazy to think about. Anyway, we got to go. I got to go. Got to hit the road. Kennington, great to see you. We'll see you Monday night for Hawkeye basketball, my friend. And thanks to all our Hawk Central listeners. For Kennington Smith, this is Chad Leistikow saying so long. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next week.